You've made smart decisions before, but you've also made mistakes that seemed invisible until it was too late. You told yourself, "I thought this through," but somehow the result didn't match the logic. That's not bad luck. That's your brain missing its own errors in real time. And it happens to everyone who operates fast, ambitious, and under pressure. The truth is, your brain isn't designed to detect its own blind spots. It's designed to confirm what it already believes. And that's why even intelligent people consistently miscalculate, misjudge, and misread situations that seem obvious in hindsight. The reason is structural. Inside your brain, there's a constant competition between two systems: the fast intuitive network that guesses patterns in milliseconds, and the slower analytical one that checks accuracy. The problem is that the fast system moves 10 times quicker than the slow one, and in high-stakes decisions, speed wins. So you make the call. Your brain rewards you with dopamine for confidence, and only later do you realize you were wrong. That's the cognitive blind zone, a gap between perception and reality. What we're building today is a neural surveillance system that closes that gap before the mistake costs you time, money, or credibility. I call it the Neuro-Tracking code. It's a 3-phase protocol for real-time error detection, designed to make your thinking self-correcting without slowing you down. Let's break it down. Phase 1, detect the glitch. The first step is awareness that your brain broadcasts tiny warning signals milliseconds before it registers a mistake consciously. Neurophysiologists call this the error-related negativity response, a spike in electrical activity in your anterior cingulate cortex that happens the instant your brain senses a mismatch between expectation and feedback. You can't feel it directly, but you can learn to catch its behavioral shadow. Here's the key. Every time you feel a micro-hesitation, a sudden sense of tension, or a slight wait impulse mid-decision, that's the signal. Most people override it with confidence. High performers learn to interpret it as data. So the code is simple. When you notice that subtle pause, don't push through. Stop for 3 seconds and run a micro scan. Ask yourself, what assumption am I running on? This short interruption activates the prefrontal cortex, integrates the signal, and reduces the error rate by up to 40% according to multiple EEG studies. You're not second-guessing yourself. You're installing an internal quality check at the speed of instinct. Phase 2, isolate the bias. Once you detect the glitch, you need to locate its source. 90% of cognitive errors come from 3 repeating biases. The first is the confirmation bias, when you selectively interpret data to support your pre-existing view. The second is the projection bias, when you assume others think or behave like you. And the third is the immediacy bias, when short-term emotions distort long-term logic. The protocol for isolation is what I call the external mirror. Here's how it works. Whenever you feel certain about a decision, mentally state the opposite out loud, as if you're forced to defend it to someone skeptical. For instance, if you believe a plan will succeed, say, "Here's why it could fail." If you feel someone is wrong, say, "Here's what they might be seeing that I don't." Doing this once per decision activates lateral prefrontal areas responsible for counterfactual thinking, your brain's built-in simulation engine. You create an internal feedback loop that mimics the function of a second opinion. That's what elite strategists, investors, and negotiators do automatically. They run internal dissent simulations before acting. Now, phase 3, calibrate in real time. The purpose of neuro-tracking isn't to overthink, it's to shorten the feedback cycle between action and correction. The faster your brain can detect mismatch and realign, the fewer errors accumulate. The most efficient calibration tool is the 30-second trace review. After completing any significant task, a meeting, decision, or analysis, take 30 seconds to replay it mentally in reverse. Visualize the sequence of thoughts, decisions, and cues that led to your final action. Look for points where your emotional state changed or your confidence suddenly spiked. Those inflection points often mark cognitive distortion. The more you practice this, the faster your brain learns to recognize these distortions during the event, not after. Over time, you'll develop what neuroscientists call metacognitive accuracy, the ability to evaluate your own thought quality in real time. It's like installing a debugging system inside your mind. Now let's go deeper. Why does this work so effectively? Because the anterior cingulate cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex are wired for performance correction, but they only activate under uncertainty. When you cultivate microdoubt intentionally, you're triggering your brain's self-monitoring network. You're teaching it to see mistakes as live data, not post-mortems. This transforms error detection from a punishment mechanism into a precision mechanism. Think of it like a pilot's flight instruments. The goal isn't to fly perfectly. It's to constantly measure and adjust. That's how you maintain precision at high velocity. But here's the twist most people miss. Accuracy isn't about being right. It's about being calibrated. You can be wrong in the moment and still win if you adjust faster than the environment changes. The best decision makers don't avoid mistakes. They shorten their correction lag. That's what the Neuro-Tracking code installs: zero lag cognition. So how do you make this automatic? The training method is what I call real-time tagging. Throughout the day, when you notice a moment of friction, confusion, irritation, overconfidence, mentally tag it with one of three words: signal, distortion, or loop. Signal means your brain is processing valid feedback. Distortion means emotion is skewing perception. Loop means you're repeating the same mental pattern without progress. Just naming these states increases awareness in the prefrontal cortex and decreases activation in the amygdala, effectively moving you from reactive to analytical control. Do this for 1 week and you'll start noticing patterns in when and why your mental accuracy drops. Most people find it happens during emotional fatigue, after social comparison, or when multitasking. Once identified, you can preempt it. That's proactive error prevention, the highest level of cognitive performance. There's another layer: environmental optimization. The brain's ability to self-correct depends heavily on context. Studies in neuroergonomics show that open cognitive loops are amplified by sensory noise. Every unnecessary visual or auditory input increases error probability by a measurable percentage. The fix? Create what's known as a low-entropy focus zone. That means one active task, one visible cue, one sound pattern. Every time you enter this environment, your brain shifts into high-resolution mode automatically. You've reduced background prediction error, allowing your neural monitoring system to detect subtle deviations faster. This is why elite performers use consistent workspaces, lighting, or soundtracks. They're not superstitious. They're stabilizing their neuro-tracking systems. Here's the paradox. The smarter you are, the more dangerous your cognitive blind spots become. Because intelligence amplifies pattern confidence, your brain becomes better at justifying wrong conclusions with complex reasoning. The only antidote is structured self-audit. That's why the Neuro-Tracking code isn't optional for ambitious people. It's essential. It's the only way to maintain accuracy at scale. Now let's install the protocol step by step. Step 1. Catch the signal. Every time you feel micro-hesitation or tension during thought, pause for 3 seconds and ask, what assumption am I running on? Step 2. Run the mirror. State the opposite view to yourself and defend it for 10 seconds. Step 3. Trace and tag. After the task, replay the mental timeline backward and label the distortion points. Step 4. Calibrate environment. Create a low-entropy workspace for high-stakes thinking. Repeat this protocol daily for 1 week, and you'll begin to feel what I call cognitive transparency. A sense that your thought process has fewer blind spots, fewer impulsive jumps, and cleaner logic chains. That clarity compounds. In a world obsessed with information speed, clarity becomes your competitive advantage, because information is worthless if you misinterpret it. Precision thinking isn't about knowing more. It's about thinking cleaner, faster, and with internal feedback built in. When you install this code, your brain becomes a self-correcting system, capable of spotting bias, recalibrating emotion, and maintaining accuracy under chaos. And that's what separates a fast mind from a truly effective one. Here's the advanced layer of the Neuro-Tracking code, turning error detection from a conscious act into an automatic system. Think of this as upgrading your mind's operating system from manual review to real-time quality control. The human brain is capable of predictive self-correction if it's trained to recognize mismatch patterns at the subconscious level. This is how elite chess players, pilots, and investors seem to sense a wrong move before it happens. They've built pattern libraries so large that their anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's conflict monitoring hub, fires microalerts milliseconds before the mistake is visible. You can train this too. The method is called Predictive Recalibration. Here's how it works. Step 1. You deliberately expose your brain to controlled error. Choose a task where accuracy matters, numbers, writing, or strategy, and intentionally introduce one small mistake. Then challenge yourself to find it. What this does is simple but profound. It teaches your brain to scan forward and backward across a pattern, building a habit of automatic verification. Within days, your neural network begins firing predictive error signals during real work. You'll feel it as a gut-level tension before you hit send or make a call. That's your built-in correction system coming online. Step 2. You link the signal to a reset gesture. Every time you catch that micro-tension, perform a small physical cue. For example, a brief exhale through the nose or a shoulder release. This anchors the detection response to calm control instead of stress. You're rewiring the brain to associate awareness of error with composure, not panic. This keeps accuracy under pressure. Now the most powerful phase, integration through reflection loops. After every major day or project, you run what I call the 3-frame review. Frame 1, the decision frame. Identify one situation where your confidence was high. Frame 2, the distortion frame. Ask what emotional or environmental factor might have skewed perception. Frame 3, the calibration frame. Define the exact rule you'll apply next time to catch that distortion earlier. The key is that you always end on an actionable correction, never on regret. This process turns reflection into training data for your neuro-tracking system. Over time, the brain stops waiting for feedback from the outside world. It generates internal feedback in real time. You begin to think like a strategist in constant simulation mode. Let's connect this to real-world application. Imagine you're negotiating. Most people get caught in confirmation bias mid-conversation. They stop listening and start defending. A trained mind running the neuro-tracking code detects the internal shift instantly. A rise in heartbeat, a subtle mental lock on one idea. The person pauses, recenters, and reopens perception. That's not mindfulness, that's performance correction in motion. The ability to detect micro-errors in emotional regulation is what separates amateurs from professionals in high-stakes communication. The same principle applies to financial decisions, leadership calls, or even creative work. Every domain rewards precision, not just accuracy in facts, but in judgment. Neuro-tracking ensures you maintain that precision when others collapse into bias or fatigue. There's a deeper neuroscience principle behind this. It's called predictive coding. The brain doesn't experience reality directly. It predicts what should happen next based on prior patterns, then checks for mismatch. When the mismatch is large, it creates stress or confusion. When it's small and detected early, it creates learning. By installing neuro-tracking, you're improving your mismatch sensitivity, your ability to detect subtle divergence between prediction and reality. This is the neurological foundation of intuition. True intuition isn't magic. It's compressed pattern recognition combined with rapid error feedback. You're simply learning to read the early warning signals that your subconscious already knows how to send. Now let's discuss error immunity, the final layer of mastery. When you've practiced detection long enough, your brain begins to anticipate not just personal mistakes but environmental ones. You start to see the flaws in systems, strategies, and other people's logic in real time. This isn't cynicism, it's situational awareness. It's how elite decision makers stay 3 steps ahead. They're not reacting to failure, they're forecasting it before it occurs. The protocol for this is called forward simulation. Once per week, take a process you're involved in, a project, plan, or strategy, and run a simple forecast. If this fails, where does the error begin? Don't focus on outcomes, focus on the first small deviation. That's where most systems break. This exercise strengthens the same neural circuits used in real-time error detection, but at a macro scale. The ability to think in failure probabilities without emotional attachment gives you strategic immunity. You stop being surprised by problems because your brain has already rehearsed them. This level of anticipation gives massive leverage in business, leadership, and negotiation. While others are firefighting, you're preventing fires from ever starting. Now there's one more critical upgrade: error recovery speed. Even the best trained brain will make mistakes. The difference between average and elite performance is not the absence of error, but the speed of recovery. Here's the simple protocol. The moment you realize you made a mental misstep, don't analyze or self-criticize. Instead, say one phrase: reset and repoint. It's a linguistic command that signals your prefrontal cortex to move focus from judgment to correction. Pair it with a brief physical anchor, a slow blink or hand release. The combination creates an immediate shift from emotional reactivity to cognitive control. This is what allows high performers to stay composed under failure. They've conditioned their brain to use error as energy, not as friction. The faster you recover, the faster you return to clarity, and clarity compounds. The entire purpose of the neuro-tracking code is not perfection but calibration. You're teaching your brain to act like a guided missile, always slightly off course but constantly correcting, always adapting to new data in real time. That's why consistent self-audit isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. You eliminate blind spots before they grow into costly outcomes. You reduce noise, shorten correction lag, and multiply precision across every area of life. Imagine what happens when this becomes automatic. You start reading a situation and your brain quietly flags the mismatch before you even process it consciously. You adjust mid-conversation, mid-trade, mid-decision. From the outside, it looks like intuition. From the inside, it's structured neuro-alignment. That's the real advantage of mental tracking. Not thinking more, but thinking cleaner. Precision under chaos is the highest form of intelligence. And in today's world, where every misjudgment costs exponentially more, in time, trust, or capital, this skill is no longer optional. It's the foundation of strategic dominance. You now have the full installation sequence. Detect the glitch through micro-awareness, isolate bias with mirror thinking, calibrate through trace review, train predictive recalibration, anchor detection with a reset cue, and simulate forward failure to build immunity. Together, they form a closed feedback loop, a mind that monitors itself in real time. That's how you upgrade from conscious decision maker to subconscious strategist. The Neuro-Tracking code isn't about being perfect. It's about being impossible to mislead, even by your own mind. You've just learned how to build internal surveillance that protects clarity, accuracy, and execution. That's the edge of the future. The ability to outthink bias, outpace confusion, and outadapt uncertainty. And if you're ready to keep building your arsenal of mental codes for success, systems that give you tangible, measurable performance advantage in every domain, make sure you subscribe to Success Code. Every week, we decode another layer of human performance, another hidden protocol that turns neuroscience into strategy. Upgrade your mind, expand your edge, and keep evolving. Because in this game, awareness is the ultimate form of power.